What's up, guys? It's Parallax Abstraction, and welcome to PXA Peeks at Hyperbolic Ignition. This is another shmup, and it's another indie shmup, which is something I'm always very happy to see, because despite not being very good at shmups, I have a weird sort of crippling addiction to this genre. So it was very cool when this dev just reached out to me and said, hey, I got this thing here you might want to check out. This is developed by a single-person developer called Heartship Games, which consists of a gentleman named Kevin Nguyen. And don't let the fact that this thing said at the beginning that it was made in Game Maker Studio put you off. I know a lot of people kind of like to poo-poo Game Maker Studio stuff, but there have been some cool games that have come out of that, and I generally think this is one, especially as a fan of shmups. This one has kind of an interesting twist on things. So just a couple of little technical notes here. So I am recording this in 1080p. I recently got a 1440p monitor, and this game actually does not allow you to change your resolution. It runs at whatever your native resolution is at the time, and the UI doesn't scale. So in 1440p, everything is very, very tiny. So I've actually dropped things down to 1080 to make this a little easier to interpret here. I also have the master volume turned down just a little bit, because this does have a problem where it's at 100% of the volume randomly distorting at times, or the sound randomly distorting at times. Not quite sure why. It still does it even when I do this, but less so. So that's just a couple of little things that I hope can be fixed there at some point. Alright, so let's fire this up here. So, I am playing this with an Xbox One controller. You can play it with the keyboard, though you also cannot rebind the keys. And playing it with the keyboard, I don't know, the default key layouts are not my favorite thing in the world. So totally playable, but just I prefer playing it with a controller. So you see there, you've got your 4 different options. You've got your normal shoot, you've got bombs that you can send out behind you, you've got a shield that you can toggle on, and you've got a secondary weapon. There are different primary and secondary weapons that you can pick up. And as you can see in the upper left there, you've got health, shield energy, secondary weapon energy, and your bomb recharge. Everything that you use except for your primary gun has to recharge. And basically you dive right in, and here's what it is. It's pretty much chaos. There's a pile of enemies in the game, and the majority of them are just making a beeline right for you. And your goal is to survive long enough in a level to spawn a boss, take out the boss while a bunch of these enemies are continuing to hang around, and then move on to the next level. You saw at the beginning there just a tiny little bit of narrative. I don't know if this game really has a story or not. I've only managed to get a couple of levels into it because it is quite difficult. But the real point of this is that it's a score attack game, obviously. As you can see up top there, there is a scoring system in this. This does have online leaderboards, which is nice. Unfortunately, this game has, so far in the month or so it's been out, not sold very well at all, because I am near the top of the leaderboards with 900,000 points, which is frankly not that hard to get. I am definitely not esports at this game, shall we say. Alright, so here we go. So I picked up a different secondary weapon there. So the red power-ups that you'll get are for your secondary weapon. So you see there's the cannon there. And the blue power-ups that you'll get are for your primary weapon. There is actually a quite wide variety of weapons, which I do like. They do very different things. I find some, personally, to be definitely worse than others. But they vary quite a bit, which is nice. So we'll pick up another one here. So here's the turret. This one I actually really like, because you get these little, you know, Gradius-style options that pop out behind you here, and that just randomly shoot at stuff, which is pretty neat. So you see we got a boss spawn in there. So there is a well, never mind that. You see there is a little mini-map down there in the bottom right that tracks where everything is. The boss will show as a much bigger red blotch than the little enemies. And you can see here in all 4 corners you've got these portal things. So that is where enemies spawn out of, but you can also jump into any of them to quickly zip around the map if you need to. And you can actually just loop around one end of the arena to the other if you like. You can see right there. So I just sort of popped around to the other side. So this is very arcadey in nature, generally fairly simplistic, but I've been quite enjoying it because it is extremely challenging. It's a game that you can play in short spurts if you want, which is very nice, and because this is a 2D Game Maker thing, it will run on a potato. So you could run this on a... I like to showcase a lot of indie games that you don't necessarily need a powerful gaming PC for. You know, something that you could run on a laptop or, you know, on a work computer that has integrated graphics in it, things like that. And that you could use as just a a good little bit of fun without necessarily needing the full-on, you know, gaming computer experience. And this definitely fits the bill for that. So you see here, you're hearing a little sound distortion there. Yeah, that still does happen even when you turn the volume down a little bit. So I do hope that the dev can fix that up. And I like the general design of this in a couple of different ways. One, as you can see, it's almost bullet helly in terms of the number of enemies you get and the fact that you have to be constantly moving. You can't sit still here. This is only controlled even with a gamepad with one analog stick. It's very much inertia-based control. So you turn and you choose to accelerate with the left analog stick. And you basically... it controls almost like, you know, asteroids or something like that, so you can have inertia-based movement like that, which is very nice. You actually, the right stick does exactly the same thing as the left stick, so it's not a twin-stick shooter in the normal way that would be defined. So, yeah, it's generally simplistic, but it's extremely challenging, and it is enjoyable. I have gotten a few levels into it. As you can see here, it has some nice little quality of life things, too, because all of those meters and bars and stuff are in the upper left corner. It actually starts to grow that red halo around you as you're taking damage, and when you're near dead, it will actually start to sort of ding at you. So you don't have to take your eyes off the playfield area in order to determine what your health is or determine if things are in a crisis state. I like that. It's just a nice little visual cue that makes it so that you don't have to be, you know, constantly having yourself glued up to the UI at the top, which in later levels can get very tricky because, I mean, I actually usually don't have too much trouble passing the first level in this, but you've seen me kind of instantly getting my ass whooped there, and the later levels in this get devilishly hard, like really, really, really hard. So, and the interesting thing too is because this is a score attack game and a well-designed score attack game, it has an element of greed in it, which is kind of cool. You saw there that when the boss spawned in, additional mobs kept spawning around him. So you can sit and hang out. I don't believe there's a time limit. So you can sit and hang out as long as you want and keep farming mobs while the boss is on the screen to sort of pad your score out before you actually take on the boss. That may not always be the ideal path, but you certainly can do that if you want, and it really gives you that opportunity to it really gives you that opportunity to you know, become really do really well on the leaderboards and things like that, which I like games that allow you to do that, where there isn't necessarily an optimal path. You know, a lot of shmups, including indeed some that I would consider, you know, massive classics, have a best route because the enemies spawn in a static pattern, and, you know, even some of the best games out there like Ikaruga, for example, stuff like that. That is a game that there is a best way to do it. If you beat, you know, if you play Ikaruga the best way possible, you will max out its score every single time. And so if you can manage to pull that off, which is of course no easy feat, you know, you effectively win. And the thing I like about this is everything is very random. Some people will like that, some people won't, because obviously if it's random, there's a lot of luck involved, and you can sometimes have a terrible run, and you know, you cannot objectively min-max the game. And I appreciate that. You know, there's multiple schools of thought on that type of play, and I get it, I do. But, you know, I do like the fact as well that if you just want to... There we go. We took that boss out. So now that the boss is gone, we can instantly go to the center of the map and peace out, or we can clear out the rest of the scrubs here to get ourselves some extra score. Also, they drop some extra power-ups, so let's take a look at these. Yes, so these are like seeker missiles that aren't bad, except for the fact that you don't really have any control over them. They don't fire super fast. And you see here we moved on to a new area, and every new area has new enemies. It has new challenges, enemies with different traits. Those weird cube things are a real pain because they actually drop, they actually reflect your bullets back at you. So you have to be very careful with that. There we go. Get screwed. So yeah. And you're sort of getting the idea here. As I said, unfortunately, this game has not sold very well, and the leaderboards are fairly sparse. I am 99% sure here you'll see when I die that I think the person who was at the top of the leaderboards probably used Cheat Engine. I mean, not necessarily. There are some people who are incredibly good at shmups, but it is suspicious, shall we say? So that is a little bit of a thing. So let's get a different one down here. Okay, that's just the normal gun again, so that one's not too interesting. That missile gun I find can be useful in certain contexts, but certainly not all others. So we got a new boss here. So the bosses are not randomized. You do get the same bosses in every level. You're going to be fighting them in the same order. This one is kind of a pain because it's one of those big cube things, and as you can see, it actually runs with a posse. So getting through the sort of outer, shield of enemies to get to him is sometimes a bit of a pain. Little tricky, but I have beaten this guy before. There are some guns in this that I would say are objectively better at dealing with certain types of enemies, which, given that the drops are random, again, can be kind of a pain. The guns don't power up either, so if you, say, pick up multiples of the same ones in a row, you're not going to get a stronger version of that gun. At least I don't believe so. Now that I say that, it kind of looks like my gun is... the bullet gun I have is more powerful than it was before, but I may be wrong. So you see, there's the boss there. See that little tiny guy? That's actually him. It's actually not the cubes, but you see he sort of magnetizes enemies to him. So you have to get through sort of his outer barrier here in order to damage him. It's the scatter shot. This one's actually kind of handy because look how friggin' fast it is. It's not very not very powerful per shot, but yeah, check this out. Get wrecked, fool. There we go. We got him. Okay. And we'll bomb these guys and... Oh, jeez. That almost went real bad. Alright, so you know what? I'm not going to deal with the cubes. We gonna get out of here and I'm going to show you guys another level. There we go. Alright. So really, you're getting the idea of what this game's about from this. It is fairly simplistic. I personally think, as a first publicly released effort from this developer, I think it's very cool. It's definitely challenging in the way a hardcore bullet helly shmup can be, and it is very random. But you can play it in short bursts. You can get very far in just a few minutes, as you've seen here. And it's replayable. There aren't that many levels in it, but it doesn't necessarily matter because your goal is score attack. So you beat the whole game, great. So hang around a level a little bit longer next time and, clear out some more mobs before you decide to take on the boss. Try to build your score up and see where you can get it to. And that's kind of the main point of it. I will say that at $10 US, which is what it's selling for, it may be a little bit expensive for what it is. Especially since it's not selling very well. I think a lot of shmup fans would actually quite enjoy this, which is one of the reasons I wanted to point it out, even though, this video will probably... dang. I was doing well there. So yeah, look at that top score. I don't know about that so much. Little bit of a gulf there, you know what I'm saying? But, hey, who knows? But yeah, I think this is actually very nicely made. I think it plays really well. It's very, very fast. It's got very, very nice pace to the action. It's very frenetic with the screen shake and everything else. I've played it a fair bit already, and I'm actually quite enjoying it. I would definitely I definitely hope this does well enough for Heartship to take another swing at this stuff, because I think he's got a good formula here. If he could polish up a couple of the little technical elements and maybe add some quality of life improvements like a resolution option and things like that, that would be very cool. I hope that maybe if this gets a good sale at some point, that maybe some more shmup fans will take a look at it. I sort of cruise the shmup stuff on Steam on a fairly regular basis, because one thing I'm very happy to see is that the PC typically hasn't had a lot of shmups, but a lot of developers, both North American and Japanese actually, are realizing that it's a fantastic market for that kind of thing. So there is actually a very wide selection of different kinds of shmups now available on the PC, which is excellent news to me. And my hope is that we see more stuff like this on there. But I wanted to showcase this because I just think it's cool, and I think it's one of these little gems on Steam that's getting lost in the massive tide of shovelware and asset flips that has unfortunately become a very large portion of the Steam marketplace these days. And that type of thing bums me out, because there are a lot of good games that don't get the attention they deserve, and I honestly do think this is one of them. You know, if you're not a shmup fan, this is not going to convert you. Obviously, this knows, you know, who it's attempting to cater to. But I enjoy the fact that it is hardcore in terms of its difficulty and its mechanical design, but it's also casual in that the controls are simple enough. You know, it's 4 buttons and an analog stick, that anybody could pick this up and try it. And probably meet a certain degree of success with it and have fun. And it's lo-fi enough that it still looks good. The production values are nice, but you could run this on just about any type of graphics chip you want, which is you know, I have this installed on my work computer for lunch breaks or things like that. I have it installed on my laptop, and it's great for that. So, you know, as someone who while by no means competitive at any of them, considers myself a bit of an enthusiast in the shmup genre, I have been really enjoying this, and I think it deserves a little bit more attention than it's been getting. I think the price may be a little high for me personally. I would not feel that I paid too much paying $10 for this. Some people might, given what it is. But honestly, I've seen people pay the same amount for less games than this. So, yeah, if you like shmups at all, I hope you'll give it a look, because it is done. I'm very glad I got exposed to it, and I'll be the first to say that if the dev hadn't reached out to me with a code, this probably would have flown straight under my radar as well, which is kind of a shame, because even if you're trying hard to stay up on everything that comes out on Steam, it's just basically impossible. So, you know, and unfortunately, small yet quality devs often get lost in the shuffle. Which is a bit too bad. But yeah, I highly recommend this. Even at $10, I think it's a good value, but you know, that part might be up to you. But in general, I've been enjoying this quite a bit. So yeah, that is Hyperbolic Ignition, developed by Kevin Nguyen and Heartship Games for the PC. It is $10 on Steam. Definitely worth a look, both as a shmup fan and even just a casual score attack fan, I think. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you liked what you saw here, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. That does help me out a great deal. I also do live streams over on Mixer at mixer.com/pxabstraction, and don't forget to follow @pxabstraction on Twitter to find out about new stuff first.